This is More Than Reality podcast, where we dive into all things faith, family, and marriage and share that there is so much more than the reality that you see on the surface. Welcome to More Than Reality with Adam and Danielle Busby.
Welcome to More Than Reality podcast with Adam Busby and Danielle Busby. And so last week you got to hear a little bit about me and how I grew up. And this week it's Danielle's turn.
And if you thought Adam's podcast about him went long, this one might be in two forms, two episodes. So last week we've made our life story up until getting to know Adam and how he grew up. And today we talk about a lot of things that I've never talked about.
This may be the hardest thing that Danielle's ever filmed. Just because, I mean, TV's one thing, but I don't know. We never dove in and talked about really
talked about
really personal stuff. If this wasn't specifically a part of the show, it was never talked about. So, there was a lot of questions over the years. I mean, honestly, our TV show OutDaughtered was on for a decade.
Oh, that makes me seem old.
Close to a decade. And I mean, it started at 2015. We started filming in 2014 and it's
2015,
2024 right now. So that's crazy. That is so crazy to think about. Our show was on nearly a decade. Wow. Okay. And so over the decade, there are so many questions out there about, Danielle's past and
family and that kind of stuff
that we just never really felt the need to talk about. But this is the platform where, we want to open up and show you, peel back the layers. Is what we've been saying this whole time is we want to peel back the layers. We want you to fully understand who we are so that we kind of build a rapport with you guys. We kind of build a bit of credibility with you guys so that you have a little bit more understanding of who we are, why we do things, why that we've made decisions that we've made. In order to do that, you just kind of have to know who, backstory and past and how we were brought up and,
the earlier days, before kids and
the fun
just
stuff,
all of it.
The hard stuff. I mean, I said probably a couple things past episodes that probably make my mom cringe, but
have you heard from your mom?
She hasn't heard. We haven't released those episodes yet.
Oh yeah. Okay. We'll follow up on that though.
One thing that we do want to do is we want to give you guys the opportunity to be a little bit more involved in the show, in the podcast. And so I've actually been researching some different platforms where you guys can call in and leave a voicemail or just a voice memo. So if we're going to ask some questions, we may post some questions on social media and you guys can share your own stories, whether it be funny stories or serious stories or whatever we may be talking about in a week. And then we may possibly use those stories and play those on the air and talk back and forth and banter about it. And so you guys can actually be a part of our show. And so I think that's going to be something really cool that'll come up. One thing about More Than Reality podcast, we want to convey to our viewers that everybody has a story. Everybody has a story to tell. You have life experiences. We have life experiences that we've gone through that we can all learn from, and good, bad, ugly. We all have a story to tell that we can all learn from. And so if we can help you guys, and even give a platform to you guys so that you can share your own stuff, this may be the place for it. So that's something that we're going to be doing here pretty soon. And just be looking out on social media. Follow Danielle and my social media. We have a More Than Reality podcast, Instagram, TikTok. We actually have a TikTok. Did you know that?
I did not.
We have a TikTok. I've posted like 3 things on TikTok. It's pretty much all the same stuff we post on Instagram. But we have a TikTok. And then we post to like YouTube stories and stuff like that. So yeah, we're trying to get on all the things so that you can keep up with us everywhere.
All the things.
So now.
Give me a good intro.
Okay.
You're like, oh gosh.
Okay. I feel like the best intro for you. Should we pray about it?
Sure. That's good.
Okay. We're going to pray.
Okay.
Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for giving us this platform, giving us a story to tell that other people can learn from, where we can share your love and your joy and your grace to other people. Father, so many of the things that, I know we're going to be talking about in future podcasts, this podcast down the road, we may be bringing up past hurts, hard things that we may just not be quite ready to talk about, or we're just unsure of how to navigate these things, Father. And I pray for Danielle right now as she opens up and probably says some stuff that she's never said to anyone else out loud. But I pray that you would just speak through her, and you would give her the words to say, and let her just feel your touch and your presence, and just be in this room with us as we navigate our past. And thank you. In your name, amen.
Amen.
Was that a good intro?
Yeah.
Were you surprised by that?
Yeah. Definitely one needed.
Yeah.
I have my tissues only because my nose is running.
Better catch it.
Hey, that's what Uncle Freddie always said.
Dad jokes.
I'm sorry if you're watching this with my tissue.
I think it's funny, sometimes whenever
this cord gets on my nerves.
Whenever I'm working on micro content and doing chopping up stuff for social media, and it may do a split view. And it's when I'm talking, you're half the time you're rubbing your nose.
I know, because it's allergies. I'm always.
So
I saw one of them.
Breaks it down into the split
gross.
view, and you're wiping your nose.
I'm always wiping my nose.
You wipe your nose so much.
It's allergies, dude. We live in Texas. All right, so let's see. I guess I don't even know where to start. Give me some. Okay, so I grew up in Lake Charles, Louisiana. I have 2 sisters who are twins, Crystal and Ashley. They are 13 months older than me. We grew up like we were triplets.
Yeah, you are in a sense, Irish triplets. You know how they call Irish twins, twins that are 11 to 13 months apart or whatever, just super close. So they call them Irish twins, but there's twins plus 1. So Irish triplets. So,
my sisters we were all really close growing up. My mom's name is Michelle. And we were always known as Michelle and the girls. We had a different dynamic family growing up. My mom was one of 7, and the baby of 7, and her mother and dad, who were moms and pops, basically helped raise myself and my sisters along with my mom too. So my mom, I don't want to get too much into all that, but my mom had us young. I think she had Crystal and Ashley senior year, and then 13 months later,
senior year of
high school. And then, if you knew the math, that's the math.
Well, I was just clarifying.
So then a year later, my mom had me. So she was young mom. She was a single mom. She did the the term dad was never a term ever used in our house. We didn't have a dad growing up. I never knew him. I couldn't even tell you anything about him. I have seen pictures back from like maybe when I was like wee little. I think like because we grew up Catholic, and so we were baptized as babies. And I think there's like, I don't even know if it was my baptism as a baby or my sister's, or if it was their birthday, but there's one picture that I think I've seen with him in it. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Who's that guy? But there's been zero relationship. Basically, like he never was there, never talked to him, don't know anything about him. He doesn't know anything about me unless it's seen on TV, I guess.
Wasn't one of like I vaguely remember a story of Pops, your grandfather. Like your mom was like working that day and he was supposed to be watching you and your sisters or something like that. And and your grandfather showed up to the house.
No, like
something like that.
So I don't want to get too much into like my mother, but like if I'm referencing my story, which is the purpose of this, is, I didn't grow up with a father figure in the house. I didn't grow up with a dad. But I do know, my mom didn't make like the best choices when it came to men in her life. And so in this scenario, this wasn't a healthy relationship that they had. But I think per the, Catholic faith and religion is you're going to get married. And so they did get married. And I don't know the ramifications of when they got divorced or whatever, and when she changed her name back to her maiden name. I don't know any of those specific details, and I don't really care to fully understand all that. It's never been a part of my life. And so my mom's family, which was the Terrios, is like, that's my family. And so that was big enough for us. And I love my family. But I think as we got older, I think me and my sisters were very like coddled and protected in a way from a lot of things. And as we got older, we started to maybe ask questions, but not out of curiosity, more of out of like, why did this situation happen? And then aunts or cousins or family members would have to fill in the gaps to help us understand certain situations that maybe we were like going through. And so one of the things was, whenever, and this is what's weird, because I don't really like saying the word dad because he's not a dad, right? So I don't know what specific to call him. The man that.
I mean, the word father is accurate. I mean, I would say the word dad is more intimate.
Okay.
And so you kind of earn the right to be a dad, but. Like,
okay. Well, then I'll go with that. So
he was like, have a mother and father, but like, I feel like the words mom and dad are a lot more intimate.
Okay.
But because he's not your dad, but he was your father, biological father.
Okay. That makes sense. Cheers.
We're getting somewhere, guys. We're getting somewhere.
So, this father, this father, I think, just from what I know, and once again, if people are listening to this and they know me and they know my life and they know my story, this is my knowledge and my story and what I have retained. So this is what's hard about talking about this, is that I've never talked about it, and you have a super
in a sense,
intimate,
kind of a memory that you've really suppressed all your life because it hasn't been a part of your life. Really.
Yeah. And, I've walked through things and I've walked through life, and I'm sure we'll get through different struggles and all these kind of things like through this podcast and stuff. But when it came to having a dad in the house, we did not have one. So this father left us when we were babies. And I think literally like left, like, I think my mom was at work and she, is going to college and working. Her parents are helping with all the things as well. But I think this guy, father guy,
he's not a priest.
God, now this is going everywhere. I don't know how to talk about it because I've never talked about it, but like socially or whatever. So I think what I know is that I was about 6 weeks old or whatnot, which means, my sisters had that first birthday. This is a picture that I remember seeing like in this old family album. Remember albums when we had printed photos? So at the time of this photo that I can recall, it was a birthday. So it had to be my sister's first birthday. And then there's like a picture, and then there's another picture that was in there with like me with this like white long baptism gown. And so I'm not saying those were the same things or, he was present for that baptism or whatnot, but that's what my head sees when I remember looking through these albums, and understanding that like he left like when I was like 6 weeks old, like straight up, peace out. I don't want to be here. This is my explanation. I'm too young. I don't want to be a dad. I don't want to be a father. I'm probably into drugs and alcohol and all wild things. And I think he just left. And I remember
only speculating.
I'm speculating, but I'm pretty sure that's probability. But what I do remember later on in life, mom saying like he left and like moved away. So that was what she kind of like told us growing up. Like he just moved away. So that's the question that everyone asks all the time. Where's your dad? Do you have a daddy? Where is he? Why don't we ever talk about him? Why has he never been seen? Because in all honesty, he's never been a part of my life, and I don't feel like he's ever deserved the right for me to talk about him and to give him a sense of, this sounds really bad because I am a Christian and I know, the rules and the values and all that, but he was not a dad to me. And he was, this man that abandoned us in a sense, right? Is that okay to say? And so I just never wanted to cross that line of like publicly talking about it on the TV show, because I knew in that realm, it was just going to be different forms of attention, and that I wasn't going to be in this form of me talking about it. I am verbally talking about it, and ain't nobody editing this right here. Yeah. And so I never wanted it to be something that I couldn't control in a sense. And because it is a part of my story, it is my story. It's the very beginning of my story. And it's,
I definitely see that. Cause if we would have talked about it on the TV show,
it just would have brought so much drama. It would have possibly explained certain situations and things. And I know through our marriage, like there are some things that I've overcome, and especially when we became parents and I saw you as a dad, I had these expectations and like all these things we'll talk about later. But I just didn't want to glorify him in any way, because I didn't feel like he deserved it, because he was nothing. Right. And I felt like if we're on this show and God's given us this platform, these children, this story and all this, that's not what I'm sharing. Like that has nothing to do with where we were in that phase of life and the value of us saying, there's something more and there's something bigger than this. And we still say that to this day. Like there is something bigger than this. Like it's outside of us. Like it's a bigger story. God's doing some work somewhere bigger. And we're just some avenue of like trying to lead and guide along the way for whatever his full purpose is, and I, that's it's a piece of my past, but it doesn't define me. And I would say that, I never really got asked about it. I never really got questioned about it. I just made it very clear from the very beginning was that like, it came up in the very beginning, like with one of the producers, and I just said, listen, it's not something that's in my life. We're not going to talk about it because this has nothing to do with him. And so I don't want to give any access in quote, quote, fame in a sense to him, because it wasn't deserved I just didn't feel like it was worth my breath, And so, yes, years and years have gone by. I'm 40 years old. I've walked what people would say is half your life, which is crazy. I'm 40. But I would say that growing up, I never felt without. I never felt like I missed out on something. And I would say that probably, and I agreed with that statement, probably until we had Blake. And I had friends, I'd spend the night at their house, and just family dynamics and being around people with dads and stuff. It never bothered me, and it never made me feel, well, I don't have that.
It's like you don't know what you don't know. You never knew your entire life, like what it was like to have a dad. Like you had a great family of like uncles and stuff that would step in and help out. And then an amazing grandfather that kind of acted as that fatherly dad role, but it's different. It's not the same.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, like I said, there are a lot of people, and I don't want to decredit this, that go through a lot of struggles with, especially being a girl and a dad, like not having a dad, and like how that can hurt and damage one growing up and later on in life. And I honestly feel that, God knew what was around us, and that gap was filled. That gap was filled with the love of my mom's family. I mean, my grandparents helped raise us just as much as a mom and dad as my mom was, and were above and beyond with all the things that I had to get taught, and teaching me how to ride a bike. And all those things was it came from with my grandparents. And so relationships with my mom were, listen, mom was young. I mean, could you imagine graduating high school, having 3 kids, going through college? And, I praise her for, graduating, becoming a teacher, and going to school and working, and doing as more of like a grown mind. I can say I really do feel that she did try to do the best that she could with what she had. And our life was a struggle. It was always there was a lot of unhealthy situations we were put in, and a lot of scary situations we were put in, and bad choices that I think that she made as a mother. But if I reflect on that, I would say that I want to trust that she was doing the best that she could, but there was a lot of mental instability that caused a lot of harmful situations to be brought in the presence of me and my sisters. And so some of those things are traumatic in ways, and I'm not quite sure if I'm going to talk about the depthness of that right now, but there are things that I remember. I didn't grow up with this dad figure, but my grandparents, from beginning of they were mom and dad, but they were pops and moms, and my mom was mom. And my mom had, she was one of 7 that was alive whenever, we were born, but my grandma did have twins that she miscarried. And then she also had triplets that lived for a couple days back way in the early 50s, I think. And so it was a big family. And my grandparents were amazing, and I love them. And all I can think about today and all these days is that, man, if they could only be here to see the girls, that's what, something's wet in my eye. Dang it. That's where my heart goes. It's because of the love and the relationship I had with them was a lot closer than what I have with my mom. And that's what makes me sad about just looking at where things are today and how stuff is. It's just, my grandma would be
I mean, you never met my grandma because she had passed away when I was like a junior in high school. But I don't know. I just think about like how wonderful this day will be when we're in heaven and we all get to like rejoice and like dance. And I can't wait to hear her laugh and all that kind of stuff. And just see the girls. Like I just want, like, if somebody asked me one thing, someone did ask me one thing, what's like a hero in your life? And I would say like my grandma. And gosh, why am I crying, Adam? This is why I don't want to do this. But I do want to do it. I do want to do it. Tissues for my nose. She just, I don't know. I think there's days that I remind myself of her without even thinking that I ever would have thought I would be like her, in a sense, that I cook for a freaking cafeteria every day, like things like that. It just makes me think of my grandma and moms and pops. But my relationship growing up with them was they were the stability for me and my sisters. We did live with mom at, an apartment for years. And then I think when I was about 4th or 5th grade, we moved into like a house. She would bring us to school, but either more than likely pops would pick us up from school and we'd go to their house. We'd have our homework, we'd have our snack. And I remember like high school, middle school and stuff, it's like, gotta get home, watch Saved by the Bell and California Dreams. But they would tell us, you got to do your homework first. And we'd get our little Debbie cake snacks. That was our snack after school. Crystal still has those snacks every day after school. They taught us like what we know today, as far as like, we would mow the grass. Like I was mowing the grass at, the Quince age right now. Like they're 9. I was definitely crazy. Mowing the grass.
Yeah. I mean, that was like the crazy thing, like listening to your childhood and stuff and just like hearing like how fast you and your sisters had to grow up.
Yeah. I mean, we did
because like y'all were like so self-sufficient and like taking care of yourself at such a young age, because
my mom was going through a lot and trying to provide for herself and her children, but also just, I think, and this isn't quoted from her, she's never told me this, but like, I think she was just majorly struggling. Like, and I'm not sure much has changed, if I'm honest. But,
struggling how? What do you mean?
Just like mentally, like anxiety, depression, and like all these things, like just mental illness from early on. And, being young and getting pregnant to just struggles in life and not making good decisions. There are a lot of memories that, I honestly would say up until probably just a few years ago that I didn't know that my sisters even knew the same thing that I knew. Because growing up, it was like the twins and me, and they shared a room and I had a room by myself. And then when we moved into the house, we kind of all shared a room, and then I had a room, and like we'd move out, whatever, like move into the other room, whatever. But I was definitely always set apart. I was always not the multiple ones. I was the other one. Here's the twins and her. Here's the twins and the other one. And so I think that's what, like today, as a mom of multiples and not a multiple, my heart is weak for Blake because
she's the other one.
She was me, Yeah. And so like, I feel like I'm always trying my best to be cautious over like Blake in this scenario or Blake in that scenario. And we've talked about this lots of times.
Because the Quints do get a lot of attention.
And it's overwhelming all the time, and so. And
then, a lot of people will like approach us like at a store or something like that. And because like all of the, the hype and everything is centered around the Quints because of, they're these record breaking little kids. And it's just so crazy because there's 5 kids who were born at the same time. And so, you can kind of see that, and it like frustrates us sometimes because like people will like look right past Blake to like look at the Quints or talk to the Quints or whatever. And then Blake's right here. And like for us, like we hate that.
Yeah.
And just because, from your childhood, that's like
triggers to me, And so I'm always like, oh, and this is Blake, or hey, Blake, or like something. Anyway, I think, God, there's just so much. I just don't even know what the avenue of
where to go. But I already broke a tier. So episode 4, first tier. So I had to write that down. Put that in the books.
Mine was in like 2 or 3 or something like that.
Or number 1.
It was 2, I think.
So I guess with a lot of this being said, like my grandparents raised us. My mom raised us. But it was, I don't want to like hurt anybody's feelings, like step on anybody's toes and whatnot. But a lot of my memories are with my grandparents. And maybe that's because those are the memories that were the joyful memories. And the ones with mom were possibly not, they were more
stressful.
Yeah. And just like, you got to black out a lot of that out, you know? So I, learned discipline and chores and how to mow the grass. My grandpa was like a farmer, and we grew up, me and my sisters, because my mom was the youngest of the 7. And we were also, well, no, I wasn't the youngest of the cousins.
Wait, your grandfather wasn't a farmer.
Yes, he was.
A farmer?
He had over by the house.
He was a gardener.
That's a gardener at his house.
He had a big garden. It wasn't like
it was a farm. There weren't animals. He did vegetables.
He was probably your grandfather.
He did. He sold to the local stores.
Your grandfather was retired probably by the time y'all were born, right?
I would assume.
Yeah, because like he didn't have to work anymore, and that was like his main thing that he absolutely loved. Like every single day.
What do you call a farmer?
I mean, a farmer is like somebody out with like
hay bales and cattle.
Like,
that's a cattle farmer.
Acres and acres of land that specifically is like, I'm growing this to sell it.
This was Lake Charles. Like he did that on his other property.
His other piece of property is smaller than half of our yard.
No, it wasn't. Okay, we're not going to argue about Pops' yard because I'm going to win no matter what. And
it's just weird to call him a farmer. He was.
That's what he was.
Call him a
Dude,
farmer.
We grew tomatoes, eggplant, cucumbers.
He had a garden.
Green beans,
he had a really
okra.
awesome garden.
Yeah, and guess what? We sat there and planted those things and grew those things and sold those things. And they went to the people in the town, and they went to Market Basket, Kroger.
It was a big garden. I would not call it a farm.
Whatever. It's a farm to me in my 5-year-old vision.
Within the city limits of Lake Charles, we're not having farms in there.
You're rude. Let me put some lip gloss on. I hate when my lips are dry, and I have to always have some on my lips. So we grew up, and that is like literally every day. That's where we go to school. They'd pick us up from school. Sometimes we'd sleep at their house, and that's every dinner was at their house. And then maybe they would bring us home, or mom would pick us up after work, and we would go to the apartment or to the house that we lived in at that time. So I think, which is so incredibly crazy to think, in 4th grade, which is the quints age right now. In 4th grade, I remember that was my mom got a teaching job, and that's when she met like some of her like friends, like Mary and like all them. And then when that family all started having kids, we started babysitting those kids. I was in 4th grade. This would be the quints right now. I was like 10 years old, and my sisters were in 5th grade, and we were babysitting. Isn't that crazy? But we were like, I would say like, most of the time we 3 would be together watching one kid or like whatever. But we started babysitting at a young age. And then going through middle school, we were babysitting, but still, we're still doing like, I would just say like we grew up, I would say probably around that 3rd, 4th grade. I would say like life to me in my eyes was, I was responsible for things.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I can't, now that I have like a 4th grader and we have an 8th grader, it's like, it's hard for me to even imagine the responsibilities that I had that they would have right now, And so a lot of that is upon this world today and the whatever, but
kids are just soft these days.
Yeah. And I'm like, dude, I mean, I was paying bills by the time I was in middle school.
I mean, yeah.
To
I mean,
my mother.
look at our childhood.
I mean, we just definitely grew up very different.
I mean, we were like free range kids in elementary school. You know, I remember growing up and going and playing at my friend's house, and we would jump on our bikes and we would be gone.
Yeah.
I mean, no cell phones, no nothing, no way to get a hold to us. It was jump on your bike out in the woods, and I might be back when the sun goes down. And if mom and dad have to go anywhere, they're just driving circles around the neighborhood, just screaming into the woods for my name. And hopefully I come out, because that's what it was like. But
Aunt Yolande had the cowbell.
we wouldn't dare do that with our kids nowadays.
No, I'm like,
Just
I'm nervous for you to ride down the street in our neighborhood.
Yeah.
In 4th grade.
Like, I don't want them to go 2 roads over. You know, it's just
It's a scary world these days.
The times that we live in are much different for sure.
Right. So along with like growing up in that foundation of like family and whatnot, we did go to church. We were raised Catholic, went to CCD, First Communion in 3rd grade, and like all that kind of stuff. I never felt like anything made sense, which is where I remind myself that we have a girl named Riley Page in our life, and she's just like me when I was little, apparently, with all her questions and always wanting like an answer and something to be clear, and that doesn't make sense. Why, you know? But my mom had 2 sisters. Those 2 sisters each had 3 kids. And so I would say, I mean, lots of my weekends, I honestly could not even tell you what my mom was doing, or the summers. I, had a best friend. I would live at Emily's house for weeks. And I'm thinking, once again, as a mother.
Yeah. You don't even check on your kid.
How does this even happen? However, as the kid, you're like, yay, I'm at my cousin's house. Oh, I'm at my friend's house. And another day. You don't think about it. But as an adult, as you reflect and
like, wow, she never
things
even
goes on, I'm like, I think I stayed over there for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So things like that make me think, and I don't necessarily know, I'm not going to get all into like mom drama situations, but like, because that could be a whole nother podcast, it could be a show, it could be a movie. But I would not say that I ever felt like I missed out on things growing up. I felt loved. I felt wanted and needed and included, and things like never really bothered me. I think some of that is due to feeling love because maybe others around us felt they needed to fulfill something. But my aunts and uncles and stuff, like, they were amazing. Like we were always with them making like the best times. Like, there were rules there, but you also had all these things that we would do and play and put on shows and all the things that Mackenzie, Blake, and Lily do these days. Like, we grew up doing that with our cousins. Like, we'd play the newscast and like we'd make an Oprah episode and like, all kind of commercials, like just for fun. But I think if I kind of like speed on through life, there was a lot of like, I would say through high school, my mom never really made wise decisions when it came to men in her life. And she never, ever remarried whenever she got divorced from my father. I don't want to say the father, my father. I just never talked about this that much in one day. But men that she did date, I would say that she never got remarried, which for whatever reason, whatever. And I kind of would say that I am kind of glad we didn't like go through like, yeah, she was in relationships, but they weren't like
having to navigate like having
marriages
a stepdad.
and yeah, all that, that would have been like really challenging. But we were always with our family. Our holidays were big, or every holiday was big. We had a lot of cousins. Everybody wanted to come to our side and come to all the things. And we still love to have those traditions these days. It's like family. So it's very hard to say certain things when we talk about family, because I have a different relationship with my mom, and it's never been one of the best. It's always been, I have to remember that people listen to this, and that's the hardest part about this, is that I've prayed for so long. Like, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but I want to be able to share my life and my testimony and my experience and what it has done to me and made me who I am. Yeah. And so my relationship with my mom was never great, honestly.
And so right now we're going to end this episode, and we're going to continue it on to next episode. It's going a little bit longer than we want to, and we're just going to do a continuation next episode and finish out Danielle's story, just because there's so much there. So stay tuned for that. But this is episode 4 of More Than Reality podcast, and we will see you in the next one.
Thank you.